South and heavier showers in the north and west towards the evening. An overnight low of 5 tomorrow. A mostly bright and breezy day with a few showers in the west. A high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Holly Jones.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, I talked last night extensively about just how grave things in Milan were. And just a couple of hours after I came off air, we had this very dramatic press statement from the Italian Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte.
There will no longer be a red zone. There will no longer be a Zone 1 and Zone 2 in the country. There will only be Italy, a protected zone. So across the whole peninsula, people should avoid all movement, unless they are for 3 specific reasons: for work, emergencies, or health reasons.
So, work, emergencies, or health reasons are the only reasons why you should be out moving in any way at all. Effectively, the Italian Prime Minister has told 60 million Italian people to stay at home. This is, without doubt, the most drastic thing that has happened in any Western country since 1945. And it expresses the genuine level of concern that there is within the Italian government. Well, today, England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jenny Harries, said this about our prospects.
The Chief Medical Officer and the Chief Scientific Advisor, noting that there's likely to be more cases now in the community, and we recognise that. But as it is currently at the moment, we still have relatively few cases here, which of course is why we're still in the containment phase. Well, obviously we will have significant numbers in a way which I think the country is not used to. This is the sort of thing that professionally we're trained for and very rarely see almost in a professional lifetime. So large numbers of the population will become infected, but because it's a naive population, nobody has got antibodies to this virus currently. Having said that, we know that 99% of those almost certainly will get better, and most people will have really quite mild disease. They will not need to be in hospital. They can be managed very safely and appropriately at home.
That was England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jenny Harries, saying so far the numbers aren't too bad. It's only 373, but she accepts it will go up by several thousand. But it's going to be okay, because 99% of people are going to recover, and the vast majority of people will have a relatively mild case of coronavirus. Now, I know that when I talk about this here on LBC, and indeed I did a piece of BBC's Newsnight last night, that lots of you shout and scream on social media, who the hell is Nigel Farage to talk about this? You know, he's not a doctor, he's not a scientist. You know, why on earth should we listen to him? Well, I'll tell you why maybe you should. Because I'm quite good at numbers. I understand these things. I've done these for most of my adult life. And I want to question, I'm sorry, but I want to question what we've been told today by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, because I'm just going to do numbers with you. She says 99% of people will recover fully and most will have a very mild case. OK, so in Italy, the number of diagnosed cases has gone up overnight from just under 8,000 to just over 8,500. But here's the kicker. Of the 8,500 confirmed coronavirus cases in Italy, over 5,000 are in hospital. And getting on for 1,000 are, as we speak, in intensive care. And the death toll has gone up by over 35% in one day to 631. And I accept there'll be lots of people with coronavirus in Italy that have not yet been diagnosed, so I accept that. But if, of the diagnosed cases, 55% have been hospitalised, now it may well be that there is a mutation in Milan and that part of Italy that is particularly severe that won't affect us. But I do repeat the point that I've been making here on LBC for days, that I worry. And, you know, I'm normally a stuff and nonsense type. I'm normally, they don't worry about anything. You know, just get on with our lives. But I really think we are underestimating this. And yet, what we know is that Boris Johnson told us yesterday, at some point in the future, we will take drastic action. At some point in the future, if you've got a bad cold, we're going to stay at home. We're not saying it yet, but at some point in the future. And I can tell you, from what I've seen in London today, do you know, I drove up here to Leicester Square earlier from Westminster. It was like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Literally, barely a car on Whitehall. And people that I've spoken to, they are making contingency plans for a government that has underestimated a crisis to, at some point in 2 weeks' time, perhaps do something similar to what the Italians have done. Now, let's hope we don't get there. I hope to goodness we don't get there. But just looking at what's happening in Italy, this is potentially very, very serious. So I'm asking you, do you think the UK is ready for an Italian-style shutdown? Could you cope? Could your business cope? Could our economies cope? Could our banking system cope? Are we ready for an Italian-style shutdown? Because I tell you something, out there in the corporate world, this is now being actively considered today. Let me know your views on 0345 60 60 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet to Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course watch us on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Are we ready? The budget tomorrow is going to be a really very, very big moment. And, you know, Rishi Sunak has been pushed into this very much at the last minute, whether he's actually ready to take on the sheer magnitude of what needs to be done. But some of the minimum things, and by the way, one or two banks today have started to say that there'll be, you know, a relaxation of people paying their mortgages if they're off work and affected by coronavirus. I suspect that Sunak tomorrow is going to have to say that, you know, businesses that don't pay their VAT on time, businesses that can't meet some of their commitments, there's going to have to be a sort of 6-month window. And I think we have to accept that the budget deficit, you know, which has come down significantly over the course of the last few years, is in the short term, as it did back in 2008, and that, of course, was bailing out banks. And I'd much rather we bailed out and helped small businesses, but there's going to have to be a significant increase, and we're going to have to borrow and spend. But I suppose one thing you can say, those dramatic market moves that we talked about yesterday showed that 10-year gilts, 10-year government bonds, the rate at which government can borrow 10-year money is just above 0%. So I guess the only upside for the government in this is they can borrow huge amounts of effectively free money. And I think to dig ourselves out of this crisis, they're probably going to have to do that on an almost extraordinary scale. Nigel, how on earth could we restrict freedom of movement of people in towns like London, says Rob. Rob, we are not a communist state. We're not a police state. We can't absolutely force people to self-quarantine and stay at home. You are absolutely right in saying that. But, you know, we are getting very, very close. Very, very close to that being suggested. And Boris Johnson was hinting at it yesterday. You know, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer says there are going to be thousands of cases very soon. Even in Italy, you know, people are, for work or medical reasons, still allowed to move around. So it's not a complete and total martial law shutdown, but it is, frankly, the next best thing. Keith in Chingford says to me, most of the people that I've seen in the last couple of weeks have not taken the government's advice, and people flying back from Italy are using public transport. Well, look, Keith, I have been banging on about this for days. You know, I simply can't believe that we've allowed people to come in, 17 flights on Sunday from Milan Malpensa coming into UK airports, and people being allowed then to get on the underground and go home. But I'm not discussing that tonight. I'm discussing, are you prepared? Is your business prepared for you now to work at home? Is that practicable? Is it possible in the modern age that maybe the economy could still continue to function? Michael is a new caller from Birmingham. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Can we cope working from home, Michael?
Well, I think we're going to have to, Nigel. I think at the end of the day,
so do I.
There's a lot of factors that the government's not taking into account here in terms of the transmission rate of being nearly 3 to 1, which is unreasonably high. And I think talking to my suppliers and my colleagues in business today, a lot of companies in the UK are now banning with their staff and their suppliers domestic travel as well as international travel. They're closing their doors to people coming in to visit for supplier audits, for just ordinary business meetings up and down the country. And I think as an industry, I work in healthcare, we're taking it more...
Yeah. Michael, who works in healthcare. You're back. Sorry, Michael, I lost you for a moment. You said you work in healthcare.
I do, yes.
Continue.
Yeah, so the industry that I'm working with obviously we manufacture products for the industry, and I've been in the healthcare sector for 35 years. Up and down the UK today, we're finding that our suppliers, our business partners, are closing their doors to visitors from the UK. So basically, if you're going to have an audit from a notified body, if you're going to work with a visitor company that's providing products for you in the UK, they don't want to see you. They've got a very strict protocol in place. We're instigating the same protocol in our industry, in our business, to keep, if you will, non-employees out of the factory, out of the offices, out of the plants, because the government isn't taking matters in hand, and we feel, as an industry, it's important that we set the lead and do something about it ourselves.
Yeah, fine, so we're not meeting each other, but can we still carry on commercial activity effectively?
Well, there's an interesting point. I think we can, but supply chain is a real issue. Most people manufacture products in the UK and Europe for sale in the UK and Europe, and supply chain of raw materials extends worldwide. For example, we've seen problems with products coming in, raw materials from China and the Far East, delayed 2, 4, maybe 10 weeks. And obviously you've got supply materials on hand, but eventually your supplies run out because demand now is increasing for certain healthcare supplies. So yeah, there is a point now where our customers are saying to us, can you guarantee product availability? And we can't honestly answer yes.
No, but Michael, on balance, we can muddle through, yeah?
Oh, I think we will. I think, it's going to get worse for the next 6 or 8 weeks. But yeah, I think if we take matters in hand and start to self-isolate ourselves and become, if you will, more socially distant and where we can be, I think we can get on top of this. But I do feel that despite the advice we're getting from the government and from their health advisors, we need to step the game up a little bit and take...
Well, I agree entirely. Michael, thank you. Now, one or two of you really trying to have a go at me here. Nigel, stop this nonsense. The world population is not dying. It's completely out of control. You are normally a very sensible person, but you're neurotic about this. Why don't you put your name on it? Or better still, call me on 0345 6060 973 and tell me why, with 8,500 diagnosed cases, with over 5,000 of them in hospital, this is not something to be worried about. You ring me up and tell me why that is not a concerning or alarming number, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Terry in Portsmouth says, Nigel, you're wrong. It's not about numbers, it's about demographic. Italy has got more pensioners than us. Terry, 70% of those in intensive care tonight in Italy are under the age of 70. Wake up, everybody. What is happening in Milan is really, really horrid. It's 6:15. Time for the news headlines with Holly Jones.
6 people have died after being diagnosed with the coronavirus in the UK, with the number of patients testing positive rising to at least 373. The whole of Italy is on lockdown and hundreds of flights to and from the country are being cancelled. The death toll there has now surpassed 600. Several banks have started to make provisions to help customers affected by COVID-19, including the chance to defer mortgage payments. LBC weather, some rain in the south and heavier showers in the north and west towards the evening. An overnight low of 5 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. They're accusing the M4 into town. There's a lane closed between Junction 4 for Heathrow and Junction 3 for Hayes because of an accident. On the M1, there are delays going out of town. There's a lane shut because the lorry's having a tyre change just before London Gateway services. On the M25, anti-clockwise, it's taking about half an hour to get from Junction 9 for Leatherhead to Junction 6 for Godstone because of the roadworks. They're accusing the A40 heading out of town from Hillingdon Circus to the Denham roundabout because of an accident. On the trains, there's major disruption affecting Avanti West Coast and London North Western services to and from Euston after a signalling problem earlier on. On the tube, there are severe delays on the Jubilee line, and the Piccadilly line has severe delays westbound from Cockfosters to Acton Town.
LBC.
How much money will you get when you sell your car?
11,000.
12,000.
12,600.
£13,000.
Wouldn't it be great if you could see offers from online buyers and specialist car dealers all in one place? Motorway.co.uk is the comparison site to sell your car. With Motorway, it's easy to compare offers and find your best deal. You could get up to £1,000 more. Go to motorway.co.uk, the easy way to sell your car for more.
Motorway.co.uk.
This is LBC.
New Yakult Light is enriched with vitamin D and E.
Magically placed there by golden sunbeams, carried on the wings of ancient butterflies.
No. They're added by scientists and filled with Yakult's unique bacteria scientifically proven to reach the gut alive. Yakult, a little bottle of science, not magic.
A credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass. A full leather ebony interior. Then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar. Land Rover. Above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
You can always trust that song about a little shark to get the kids in the bath. But all it takes is a bit of faulty plumbing to set off the bedtime waterworks. Thankfully, at trustedtrader.com, you can hunt out plenty of vetted, reviewed, reliable professionals in an abundance of trades. Like a plumber who'll rescue bath time. And just like that, it's safe to go back in the water.
TrustedTrader.com. This is a message from the government and the NHS about how to protect yourself and others from coronavirus. Wash your hands more often than usual, for 20 seconds each time. Use soap and water or a hand sanitizer when you get home or arrive at work, when you blow your nose, sneeze or cough, and when you eat or handle food. For more information, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus. Protect yourself and others.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Are we prepared for an Italian-style shutdown? Will the economy continue? Will we muddle through? My guess is somehow we will, but it won't be easy and very, very tough for Dave. Dave is a black cab driver in London and says to me, Nigel, I'm sending you this message at 6:10. The last job I had was at 3 o'clock. It's a lot worse than they're telling us. Yeah, Dave, I sympathise. I spoke to a black cab driver earlier on today who was telling me much the same thing. Nigel, I work in the city, and I heard that some banks are sending home older staff to work from home, and some of the large US investment banks are dividing their workforce, so half work from home for 14 days and the other half are in the office. Then they swap. They are planning and taking it very seriously. Yup, the corporate world is. They've seen what's happened in Italy and they are taking this very, very seriously. Grace, who lives in London, said, my firm is having meetings tomorrow to prepare all staff to work from home, which we previously never done. And I'm not sure how it's going to work, but we can't be too careful. Yet, Grace, I honestly think these conversations are taking place in firms everywhere. We will somehow muddle through, but it won't be easy. And the economic shock, of course, of shutting down, of locking down, would be horrendous. But in the end, and I've talked about this the last few days, government has to think about its priorities. Is it the risk to human life and health, or is it the economy? And it's about getting that balance right. Nicola is a new caller from Milan. Nicola, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Good evening. So are you a resident in Milan?
I am, yes.
And how are things?
Pretty grim, to be honest. Pretty grim at the moment. I mean, nobody's really at work now. Most people are working from home. I work with banks and I work with quite a lot of doctors as well. So, UniCredit, they're still going into the bank, but they're not having any visitors or doing that much business, obviously, because of the situation. Most of the doctors are starting to get really, really panicky now because things are just terrible in our hospitals here in Lombardy.
Yes, and you've got good hospitals, Nicola, haven't you?
Yeah, they are. They're really good. Really good.
Rated the second best in the world after Japan.
Absolutely.
But the sheer numbers that are swamping the hospitals, it's very, very difficult.
They're on the knees. They've not got enough respirators. They're having to make choices as to who to treat. It's just terrible. And I think if, over 60 years of age, chances aren't very high for getting a respirator now.
Nicola, this is the awful truth.
It is.
It's
and
the
I'm just
awful
worried
truth.
that England don't understand what may be heading their way. That's
I was nervous.
Worrying me.
I was nervous last night, Nicola, about telling people on this show what I'd heard from Milan yesterday.
No, you were spot on. You've clearly got some good contacts here,
Well,
Nigel,
I do,
because your information was spot on.
Yeah, but what I did, I've got contacts in the Lombardy government, and that's where I'm getting the information.
Right, okay.
What I didn't tell people, Nicola, and I will now, as you're on the phone, is the reason the death toll has risen as sharply as it has overnight is there are simply not enough respirators, and that means Italian doctors are having to make the most awful decisions. Nicola, do you know people personally who've been struck down with the virus?
Nobody. I don't know anybody who's actually even tested positive for the virus. And I live right in the centre of Milan. Now, but as I say, I work with doctors, and I know they've all been moved from the normal work, and they're all having to work in the emergency departments now. And it's just terrible. It really
but
is
maybe,
terrible.
Nicola, the action that's been taken is to stop the spread of it, and let's hope that it works. Presumably, living in the centre of Milan, presumably the restaurants are closed, the bars are closed.
Everything. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, half of them have been closed for 2 or 3 weeks now. But since they've brought in the new directive, 6 o'clock, everything's just dead, and they don't really want you outside after 6 o'clock. If you, I nip out to take the dog, but that's about it.
And presumably, Nicola, supermarkets are open. You can buy food, water, whatever you need.
Yeah, the supermarkets are fine. There's no problem. There's no empty shelves or anything. You do have to. So many of you are allowed in at once. Obviously, when other people leave, and because they don't want too close a contact between the customers. But apart from the food situation's fine. That's not a problem.
Nicola, I hope this ends before too terribly long. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Zach is a new caller to me from Manor Park. Zach, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
Doing well. Are we prepared for an Italian-style shutdown, Zach, if it were to come?
I don't think we are, and I don't know what the government is waiting for. As in, why are we waiting till we reach that stage?
Well,
we're letting it spread by
Boris has told us, Zach, that if you get a bad cold, you may be told to stay at home. Why not say it now?
The problem is, if you look at the facts, as you said, look at Italy. One of the doctors that's at the forefront of this crisis in Italy, it was in Sky News this morning. Dr. Daniele Maccini, I think I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, but he said that it's not true that it's just affecting people over 70. A lot of the people on life support are actually young adults who were healthy previously. So, they're kind of underplaying it. And I think it may be because they don't want to spread mass panic. But I think that's counterproductive because people are taking this way too lightly. And I think if it does spread the way it has in Italy, there's no way we have enough hospital beds to treat everyone. So I just think,
Well, let's hope, Zach. Zach, let's hope, and I'm sure actually they are, but let's hope we've got contingency planning to look after thousands of sick people.
Well, if you the thing is, we've never had this kind of crisis. So it's like you're saying, let's wait till it happens and see if we can deal with it.
That's the bit that gets me. I do feel.
Doesn't it make more sense to do what Italy has done now and to nip it in the bud and stop it spreading? Like, does that just not make more sense? Because
Zach, what would you close down then?
I'm in London, right? The underground system will be literally a hotbed for the virus. If one person steps onto the packed tube lines during, rush hour, imagine how many people will get off the train with that virus. And it's like, we're just waiting for, and that's probably already happening. We just don't know about it yet because the symptoms aren't showing. And then we've let people come in from, countries where we know it's there.
Don't
And
start me on that.
Why have we allowed? Is it for the sake of being PC? I don't understand why.
Zach, I don't get it either. I really don't get it. Is it they're worried that more airline firms will go bust? I just don't know. I don't know. Zach, I'm with you. We should do more. Whether we should close the whole of London down, I'm not so sure. The point about borders, very interesting. So today, and this really is quite something, Austria have announced a ban on people entering the country from Italy unless they carry a medical certificate in an attempt to stop coronavirus spreading. So European Union's free movement rules just literally disappeared today. In a crisis, we all become national. In a crisis, you can forget your flags and anthems and people in Brussels. No one gives a damn about that stuff. In a crisis, you look after your own nation. But that is extraordinary, isn't it? Given there's quite a big land border between Italy and Austria, no Italian can cross that border without a medical certificate to prove they haven't got coronavirus. So this is pretty extraordinary stuff that is happening all over the world. Israel, similarly. You can't enter Israel unless you have a clean medical certificate. You can't enter Australia unless you've got a clean medical certificate. Montenegro today is saying much the same thing. David makes a point about the economy that's a very powerful one. He says, I own a driving school. Will the government pay me to self-isolate? They help the bankers. David, we're going to hear this again and again and again. Countless tens of billions were found to bail out the bankers in 2008. Will they help people like you running your own businesses? Maybe we'll get a hint of this from Rishi Sunak in the budget tomorrow. Either, I get here, they rebate business rates or they freeze business rate payments, or many businesses are going to close. And you're absolutely right. The high street in dire trouble already. Many independent retailers just about hanging on. They're going to need some big, big help from a chancellor tomorrow. My doctor's surgery has stopped. Everything now is online appointments. Diane, I'd love to know where you are, because that's the first case. That is the first case I've heard of this in this country. Although I will say this. I said it yesterday, it's worth saying again. The people I've spoken to who phoned 111, in a couple of cases it took time to get through, but they all felt the support they were getting was absolutely excellent. Are we ready? Can we cope? In a moment, I'll talk about the first rebellion of Boris Johnson's government, and it's over. Huawei will tell you how it went. For now, it's 6:30. Time for the news with Holly Jones.
A sixth person has died after testing positive for the coronavirus in the UK. The man, who was in his 80s, had underlying health problems and was being treated at a hospital in Hertfordshire. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled to and from Italy because of the illness. More than 600 people are now known to have died there, and the entire country has been put into lockdown. Several major airlines, including British Airways and Ryanair, have suspended their services there, and several banks have started to make provisions to help customers affected by COVID-19, including the chance to defer mortgage payments. And Boris Johnson has survived the first Conservative rebellion of the new Parliament over the involvement of Chinese firm Huawei in the UK's 5G network. Tory critics had tabled an amendment seeking to ban high-risk vendors after 2022, but the government won the vote. LBC weather, some rain in the south and heavier showers in the north and west tonight, a low of 5 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
In the United Kingdom, a cold war, with medical experts saying if you've got a cold, a cough or a sneeze or a sniffle, stay at home. Could you work from home? How would your employers be? Ryan's on the Isle of Bute.
Because I work in a call centre, it would be logistically impossible.
Have they got plans in place?
If you're not in the office, you don't get paid.
Cindy in High Wycombe. Cindy, can you work from home?
I work for an over 55 residential living facility. I work with the elderly, and essentially I'm a carer.
And also, what about if one of your clients, residents, whatever you call it, one of them gets it? What is the protocol then? What are you going to do?
Well, this is it. We're all scratching our heads a little bit because we are in and out of the apartments, we're touching everything, we are all over that building. So the biggest danger is actually us.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Simply Safe. Easy to choose, set up and use.
LBC.
Are you concerned at how the upcoming budget might affect you and your business? Barnes Rofe Accountants would like to welcome all business owners and entrepreneurs to attend one of their London-based budget seminars on the 12th of March, free of charge. To book your place, please visit our website at barnesrofe.com. Spaces are limited, so make sure you register your interest. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
What's a Zoom room? It's what your conference room is meant to be, with flawless video and audio conferencing, instant wireless content sharing from any device, and just one tap of a button to start a meeting. Any space can easily become a modern, simple-to-use Zoom room, from huddle rooms to executive offices to huge training rooms. And whether you have a few rooms or a few thousand, Zoom Rooms is effortlessly scalable. Sign up online for a free 30-day trial of Zoom Rooms and meet happy with Zoom.
Here, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
On a child's bedroom window, a little wall crawler spots a skyscraper on the far side of town. Determined to reach it, the little wall crawler slowly and surely begins to climb down. Out of the window, along rooftops and branches, the wall crawler hurries, sure-footed and swift, till finally reaching the distant skyscraper. In one single bound, it jumps into the lift. It rides to the rooftop and stares at the view, where now in the sunshine, the whole city gleams. Then over the edge goes the little wall crawler, to crawl down the wall of the wall crawler's dreams. Determination can get you where you want to be. At Royal London, we're customer owned, so our only focus is getting you there. Pensions, investments, life insurance. Royal London, determination since 1861.
Royal London.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black, fit it with privacy glass, a full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, a big issue before coronavirus came along, and one that we debated here at length on LBC, is this whole question of the involvement of Huawei in the 5G network and what that means for our relationship with Australia, Japan, the United States of America. Can the Five Eyes intelligence service survive, and all the rest of it? And one of the members of Parliament who's been leading the rebellion on this, and indeed who joined me in the studio a few weeks ago, is Bob Seeley, Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight. And Bob, welcome to LBC. I watched you in action today in the House of Commons, and you were up on your feet for quite a long time making the case. Just explain, you put down an amendment to a piece of legislation to try and defeat the government. Tell us what happened.
The amendment was it wasn't in the perfect place because it was a slightly random telecommunications bill, but we wanted to test the argument in Parliament about Huawei and potentially force a vote, which we ended up doing because we didn't think the government moved enough. It was really a device by which we could measure how concerned Conservative MPs were. And I was amazed to see that I think 36 have rebelled in some form against the government, either abstaining or voting against, which is a very surprising number. And I did not expect, frankly, more than a dozen.
So this is not the end of the rebellion, though, is it?
No, absolutely not. In fact, this was to test the water about the rebellion. The big issue comes up this summer where you have the telecom security bill. There'll be a lot of good stuff in the telecom security bill, Nigel, but there will also be a 35% cap on high-risk vendors. And what we want is no high-risk vendors in our critical national infrastructure because it's a high risk and we don't want to take that risk. But we also want we'd like government to announce a timetable for getting that kit out.
And you're looking for the end of 2022, yeah?
Well, I don't think that's realistic. Some colleagues want it, others are saying, I think the important thing is we get a date for putting the kit out. We've already got a reaction I think there's a letter out from a bloke called Sir Mike Rake, R-A.
Oh, yes.
I think what we're going to have now is threats from China and threats from Huawei. Any attempt to further restrict Huawei's 5G equipment or to remove existing equipment will not only incur very significant costs, but prejudice future trade relationships with China.
And of course, people like Sir Mike Rake, Bob. People like Sir Mike Rake, they represent the companies, of course, who are using Huawei kit, and they like Huawei because it's cheap and they've got wonderful repayment terms. So they are acting very much out of self-interest there, aren't they?
Yes. I mean, I think the problem with Huawei, they will, because they've got a massive credit line from the China Development Bank, they can simply undercut everybody. And what we're looking at now is effectively other companies in the West or a non-Chinese alternative to 5G and then 6 and 7G simply not being feasible because Huawei would have bankrupted everyone else by undercutting them on price because they've got the Chinese Development Bank behind them.
So the rebellion continues, Bob Seeley.
Very much so, Nigel, very much so, yes.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. Well, that was Bob Seeley, and, it's quite interesting, actually. Some pretty senior people were involved in this rebellion. David Davis pointing out 8 ex-cabinet ministers, including an ex-defence secretary, an ex-Northern Ireland secretary, an ex-deputy prime minister, as well as the chairman of the 1922 committee and the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. David Davis says it's hard to see how the government can fail to respond. So Bob Seeley telling us there that today was a marker, but there is now a very serious debate going on about the involvement of Huawei, what it means for our national security, but to me, even more importantly, our place in the world in a Brexit Britain. It's an issue that we will come back to. It's an issue that is very important, but it's an issue that does not have the absolute immediacy that this coronavirus situation does, and everything I'm seeing and hearing from Italy really does make me worried. Hi, we are listening to you in a hotel room in the heart of Rome. Everything is shut down. Hotel dining room. I'm really worried, says Mark and Elaine. Help. Mark and Elaine, I don't know what the situation is now with flights back from Italy. I did see that British Airways had cancelled their flights to Milan, and now Ryanair have cancelled their flights to Milan. They seem to have done it voluntarily rather than being encouraged by the government. Whether you can get flights back from Rome, I simply don't know. But if you do, then there is a very, very strong case, Mark and Elaine, not just for yourselves, but for everybody else to have a test of some kind. That's how it seems to me. Can we cope with an Italian-style shutdown? Selma is a new caller from Stoke-on-Trent. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Nice to speak to you.
Good. Welcome to the show. So,
thank you very much.
Can we cope if there's an Italian-style shutdown?
I think we won't be able to cope. I don't think the NHS can cope in general. I think for the past 10 years, we've seen so many cuts. In general, it can't cope with the flu season anyway. And now we're dealing with this. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know how big it is. We don't know whether people can recover and actually recover completely. We're talking about people that, are dying that are in their 80s or 70s or 60s.
And younger.
And much younger, yes. Much younger.
Yep.
We don't know how big and how dangerous this thing is for real. And I think it's really patronising, the message from the government to wash your hands for 20 seconds.
And then it'll all be fine. It'll all be fine, Selma. Just wash your hands.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the government's going to come. He's going to come and look after my family. He's going to come and make, provisions for everybody that I come into contact with and that I infect potentially. I find it really, really disappointing in the government that they have underestimated how serious this is. And when they talk about the death rate and the figures that they go on about in Italy and the ageing population, that aging population, that is somebody's grandma, granddad, that's somebody's father.
Selma, I absolutely agree. The idea that old people are somehow expendable is a really appalling argument.
It's absolutely disgusting. And I think something definitely needs to be done about this. Further measures need to be put in place. We need to start taking this seriously. I mean, where I work, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home. And if there was a situation where, everything was on lockdown, I've stockpiled enough to last me and my husband enough for about.
Have you been panic buying, Selma?
No, not panic buying. I think just as an Asian woman, I'm used to bulk buying anyway. That's how I shop. That's how
I was teasing you a bit, but
yeah.
So you've got lots of tin food, have you?
Yeah, lots of tin food. I'm ready for anything. I'm ready for this. This is something that, you kind of think is going to happen, and you take it seriously when you hear that people that are fit and healthy are dying, and then people's parents are dying, people's grandparents are dying.
I know.
This, it affects people in so many different ways.
Selma, you make a very powerful human point. The idea that old people are expendable in this is outrageous. Selma, thank you very much indeed for your call. And Selma's right, but can I just repeat? 60% of people, as we speak, in intensive care beds in Italy are under the age of 70. The idea it's just old, ill people simply is not true. And 40% of those, at least 40% of those, in fact, about 42% of those are 64 years or under, all right? There are a lot of young people in Italy in intensive care right now. What we don't know, of the 633 that have died, we have not got yet an age breakdown of those. We will get that, I've no doubt, over the next few days. Now, John makes the point that I was waiting for someone to make, and it's about, can we cope, can we work from home? And the answer is lots of businesses can just about muddle through. But as John says to me on Facebook, factories, manufacturing and manual services cannot work from home. Millions of people have to go to work. And I think, John, isn't that the reality in Italy? That kind of what Giuseppe Conte said was that, one of the reasons why you can leave your house is if you absolutely have to get to work. But they're encouraging, as we will, if it comes to it, very large numbers to work from home. On Twitter, I've jumped into a parallel universe. I found myself agreeing with Nigel Farage. Well, that's all very worrying. Nigel, normally in agreement with you, but this is not being driven by politicians. It's down to the Chief Medical Officer. Phil in Surrey, the job of the Chief Medical Officer and others is to advise. The decision as to what political action to take is down to Boris Johnson and the government, and it'll ever be so. And you can tell me, just listen to the experts. But isn't it funny? Our experts are saying something very different to what the experts in Italy are saying today. You can always get amongst experts a very, very wide range of opinions. And who can predict where a virus that's never been seen before is going to go? We've had virologists on this programme over the last couple of weeks. No one knows whether we develop a herd immunity to it, whether it mutates into something very, very unpleasant. The decision as to whether you stop flights coming in from northern Italy, the decision as to whether you test people, ask people to self-quarantine, these are not decisions for the Chief Medical Officer. The medical officer gives medical advice to the best of his or her knowledge. These are political decisions. And there are some of us, and I'm one of them, that thinks the government on this has been following and not leading. It's 6:45. Time for the news headlines with Holly Jones.
A man in his 80s has become the 6th person in the UK to die after testing positive for the coronavirus. Officials say he had underlying health conditions. The whole of Italy is on lockdown and hundreds of flights to and from the country are being cancelled. The death toll there has now surpassed 600. Morrisons and Asda have both knocked 2 pence off the litre of the price of fuel after big falls in the wholesale price of oil because of a dispute between Saudi Arabia and Russia and the effect of the coronavirus. LBC weather, some rain in the south and heavier showers in the north and west tonight, a low of 5 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M4 into town from the M25 to Junction 3 for Hayes because of an accident where a lane stays closed. It's slow on the M3 northbound. There's a lane closed on the exit slip road to the M25 anti-clockwise at Junction 2. That's because of an accident. On the M25 clockwise, the entry slip road at Junction 5 for the M26 is closed. That's because the lorry's broken down. There are queues on the A40 heading out of town from the Polish War Memorial to the Denham roundabout at the M40 because of an accident. One lane stays closed there. There's major disruptions to trains to and from Euston after a signalling problem earlier on. And on the Underground, there are severe delays on the Jubilee line and also severe delays on the Piccadilly line.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
The death toll in Italy from coronavirus has risen by 168 today, but only by 1 in the UK. Calm before the storm, or a meaningless statistic.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Is your money working hard enough? Think about it. Are you making the most of your tax-free ISA allowance? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Just start your stocks and shares ISA with Wealthify before the 5th of April and make the most of your tax-free allowance. It's time to beat the ISA deadline. It's time to Wealthify. For more information, download the app or visit wealthify.com today. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass. A full leather ebony interior. Then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black. Understated has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar. Land Rover. Above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
With school runs costing from as little as 1p per mile, the electric car is now the car. Search Go Ultra Low to find out more. Cost based on Economy 7 and may vary.
Sheila from Birkdale writes, I arrived at yours with such excitement. You looked and smelled phenomenal. We drove to the beach. We found a secluded spot and then after 5 minutes, you were all gone. Your 2 juicy patties, crisp lettuce, onions, cheese and Big Mac sauce. Finished.
You can now spend even longer with the taste you love with the Grand Big Mac, but only until the 24th of March. Served after 11 a.m, subject to availability, participating restaurants only.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Do you ever feel like getting back under your duvet in the middle of the day? Ferroglobin is a great-tasting liquid formula with iron, which contributes to the reduction of tiredness and fatigue and normal formation of haemoglobin. Ferroglobin from Vitabiotics at Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
We need to leave now. Monty, where's your other shoe? Some things in life are hard to find quickly. Your new boiler doesn't have to be one of them. With Swell Heating's online tool, find the perfect boiler from top manufacturers like Worcester Bosch in under 5 minutes. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Can we cope with a shutdown? Well, I think some can, but an awful lot of people won't be able to. And, I work for a law firm, I get here. We're preparing to work from home imminently. However, I suspect the self-employed and 0-hours workers are going to suffer. Yeah, they would. And can we think about our behaviour during this? Chris, it's not very tasteful, but I'm going to read it out because it's quite important. Chris says, I work as a train cleaner. I'm getting very concerned, especially with passengers leaving their dirty tissues on the floor for me to pick up. Do your bit and put them in the bin that's provided. Yeah, let's take Chris's advice. Absolutely. Use it, bin it, washing hands. These are all important things. Very important things. Let's go back to Italy. Let's go to Lynn, who's a new caller from Lake Garda. Lynn, good evening to you.
Good evening. Nice to speak to you.
Good to speak to you. So you're resident there, are you?
I am, yeah. I have been for a long time.
And how is lockdown, Lynn?
It's pretty grim, and it's kind of scary. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not something that any of us are used to, but I do think that it's a wasted exercise unless everybody's going to participate.
Yes, but there are some people who have to get to work, nurses have to get to hospitals, things like that.
Oh, obviously, and that's what's going on here. I mean, a lot of people have been put into forced holidays. A lot of places have just shut down for a couple of weeks. Obviously, the emergency services, the essential workers are going to work, fortunately. Mm-hmm. But, it is person-to-person contact. So the less movement there is, the better it is for everyone.
So you approve of what Conte's done, yeah?
I do.
Yeah. You believe that it's necessary, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it is necessary, and I think UK should be doing the same, because, nobody's immune to this.
Well, I think it may be coming in a couple of weeks' time, maybe. And Lynn, how do you spend your day now? You're sort of shut up. I mean, you just listen to LBC all day. I mean, what do you do?
Well, you sort out odd socks that you haven't done for the last 15 years. You decorate your house. You do some cleaning. Yeah. You do box sets of Only Fools and Horses.
Oh, not bad. I like that, yeah.
It's not a bad thing, and we've got to try and look at the big picture. And 2 weeks out of everybody's lives is not the end of the world. We will recover. But again, unless everybody's going to participate in this, it's not something that's going to stop quickly.
No, and yet, in a couple of weeks' time, people will be itching to get back to work, won't they?
Well, they will. I mean, this has affected me, and, I work in tourism. I have no job now, and I don't think tourism is going to pick up anytime this year. But we've got to look at the big picture. If it's going to help to just stop everywhere for 2 or 3 weeks and calm this thing down, then surely it's got to be a positive thing.
OK, no, Lynn, you've made the case for it, and thank you very much indeed. I'm going to Stanmore to speak to AK, a new caller. AK, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm just kind of surprised about what my former school has sent to my brother. He still studies at their school, and they've had a person, and I quote what they sent from the letter, a person at the school, and this is Hatchend High School. I don't know if I'm supposed to say the name. But
probably not, no, but go on.
But yeah, that school had a person who's being treated for COVID-19, but the school has chosen to stay open in regards to what the Public Health England has said. And I just think that's terrifying, especially because some of the teachers at that school are fairly old, but more important, there's students who are also getting sick. And like you said before, more than 60% are those who are under 64 years old. And that's terrifying to know that schools with children and those children go back home.
Well, I obviously can't stand up the story other than what you've told me. But I'm a little bit shocked. But I tell you what, after I come off air with you, please go back and speak to our producer and our call people, and we'd love to have a look at that letter and examine that, because it does seem to me that if someone has sat in a class and perhaps played football or whatever it may be with a group of young people and they've been diagnosed positive, if everyone else is carrying on as normal, that strikes me, AK, something is very, very wrong with that. Please, we'll talk to you a little bit more in a moment. I'm going to go to Muswell Hill and speak to Philip, a new caller. Philip, good evening.
Hiya, Nigel. How are you? I'm
OK, Philip. So, could we cope with a lockdown?
Absolutely not. I have just landed from a place in Italy. I'm an airline pilot.
Yes.
Well-known European airline. We had nobody from Port Health to meet the aircraft with the infrared laser.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yesterday as well, came in from Rome, nobody to meet the aircraft, and the aircraft wasn't really full. We can take up to 190 passengers. We already had 23. But
that's not the point, is it? No.
Absolutely.
So why, Philip, why do you think, and you're involved in the industry, I'm not, why are we being so lax about people that are coming in from areas with a very, very high rate of coronavirus?
I think there's lacking support for our port health infrastructure and agents. The other day, I only flew into Ukraine. No disrespect to Ukraine, but they had army officers. As soon as they opened the door, they came in with the infrared guns, checking everybody and filtering through. It only took 10 minutes, but it was effective. But I think that's what we should be doing. We should have port health meeting the aircraft, especially coming in from Italy.
So the Ukraine are more advanced in this than we are. That just about says it all.
Opened the door, absolutely. As soon as the crew opened the door, they're already coming up, checking everybody's temperature. It only took an extra 10 minutes to disembark, but at least they could rest assured that nobody was coming in with a high temperature, of a fever, or displaying any symptoms.
It makes perfect sense to me, Philip. And tell me, so are these flights? So I did hear that 2 of the big airline companies today had stopped flights to Milan. What about other flights to Italy? I mean, are you scheduled to do more of them in the next few days?
Yes, we are still scheduled to operate a few more. But I'm gobsmacked as to why this hasn't been cancelled today. I'm even more gobsmacked that there's nobody coming out to meet the aircraft.
And how do you feel about your own personal health security, Philip?
Well, I have those air filters aren't great in the aircraft. There is a scare out there, especially for contagion. So, I just hope we don't go anywhere near those places.
Well, I wish you
at the moment.
No, I wish you luck with that, Philip. And can I thank you for coming on and being as frank about what is going on. I'm just astonished. Philip, thank you. And it just, you can't believe it, can you? You know, I'm not making this up, folks. There we have, and he didn't say the company, but there we had an airline pilot telling us that even in the Ukraine, they check people on aeroplanes because they don't want this stuff spreading. We don't bother. Because officialdom says, oh, well, maybe the symptoms won't be out yet. Oh, that's great. Let's just give up, shall we? I mean, the whole thing is utterly mad. I'm going to Watford to speak to Tom. Tom, good evening.
Evening, Nigel. Nice to speak to you, mate.
Good to speak to you. So, can we cope with a shutdown, Tom?
No chance, mate. I'm a self-employed plumber.
Yeah,
my wife is no hours or no contract carer for elderly people.
So 0 hours contract, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The only problem I've got, I've rolled up their house today, and there's 2 young children there. I'm rolling up there from another job that I don't know the person I've met, where he's come from, or where they've been, and I'm thinking to myself, hang on, I may be say contaminated. I've got to go home to my wife, which she suffers from OCP. And I'm thinking to myself, I've gone down to the local building supplies to try and get hold of some masks, gloves and whatnot. They're sold out. So what do?
I know, and the thing is, Tom, if you stay at home, there's no money, is there?
Right.
You cannot work from home, can you?
Yeah, work on day rate.
Yeah. No, Tom, I know. Well, let's hope tomorrow we hear from the Chancellor that for people like you, if you get into trouble with paying tax bills, you get into trouble with paying mortgage bills, there'll be at least a few months' relief. Tom, thank you for your call. Well, folks, all we can do is cross our fingers. At the moment in this country, the infection rate is still relatively low. Spare a thought for those in Italy going through a pretty awful, ghastly time. We hope for better times, but we fear there's worse to come. I'm back tomorrow at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. Right now, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, thank you very much indeed. Well, as you can imagine, we are also going to be concentrating on the coronavirus. In a sense, today, you feel a slight relief that only one more UK national has died. But on the other hand, you look at figures from other countries and you think, well, we are about to surely get a lot worse in this country. I want to ask you about anxiety. Because someone I know has self-isolated for what I can see is virtually no apparent reason. But he's done it because he says, well, I'm thinking of others.